Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. On each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about two soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is Joe DeVader.
And I'm Peter Spezia. We're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs and the games that they come from without getting too bogged down in music theory. Up first this week for our two games is 2008's Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots. Solid Snake's final ride with the action-leaning, cutscene-heavy PlayStation 3 system seller from Hideo Kojima.
Following that is the fourth entry in Konami's iconic horror franchise, where Henry Townshend is trapped in his cursed apartment and must find a way to save his neighbor from certain death. 2004's Silent Hill 4, The Room.
It's an easy theme this week as we continue spooky season. Got those Konami 4s, baby. Fourth entries in classic Konami franchises. Though one of them seems to have some new franchise life breathed into it, and the other is without its key contributors, so it's just living off of nostalgia.
Yeah. So like that Metal Gear HD collection is coming out, right?
Yeah, as of today.
So we haven't seen it yet. We're recording before that, obviously. But the Switch version at the very least, when some of the people at NWR that went to PAX that previewed it, whoo boy, I don't know how they got a PS2 game to run not great on the Nintendo Switch, but they found a way.
Like, isn't it not even in 60 frames per second and all that?
Yep.
Yeah, what the heck?
Genuinely do not understand how that happened. They're on their PlayStation 2 games.
Leave it up to Konami to publish a game and a port like that. But easy to talk about this week for sure. Joe, how are you doing? What are you playing?
So there was a Steam Fest, I guess 2 weeks ago now, at time of release. And I didn't get to play as many demos as I had hoped. I still have a few installed. I still want to play Another Crab's Treasure, which is the Souls-like from the people who made Going Under. Little Goody Two Shoes is an indie title that Square is publishing that apparently is extremely up my alley. So those two especially I'm looking forward to. But I did play a demo for a game called Royal Order, which seems to be like, neither of us play this genre, so I don't know how to describe it, but it's like those Princess Maker games, except instead of making a princess, it's a fantasy story where you are playing as a noble whose entire land was wiped out, and you have to figure out how you're increasing your skills in certain types of magic as you go, as well as raising just social stats and everything. It was really interesting. I didn't play the entire demo because every visual novel demo I've ever played is like 2 hours long. That's too long. But what I did play, I'm really picking up what it's putting down. So I hope to hear about that game getting a release date sometime soon.
Very interesting. Yeah, I like with Another Crab's Treasure how it's got that gun accessibility mechanic of just whip out the big gun, the crab will just blow people away in a Souls-like. I can get behind that. For me, I beat Heaven in Persona 4 Golden, so I've just got like the rest of November in that game to work with. And then I put some more time into Assassin's Creed Mirage, but doing the thing that I do, and that's to unlock all of the Eagle viewpoints as early as possible, and I popped that silver trophy on PlayStation before the first assassination boss of Al Ghul. So that's insane. I don't recommend doing that, but that was a bit crazy. I kind of like the smaller scope of it. It's nice and appreciated, but we'll see what goes on with the franchise from there. But yeah, having a good time.
I feel like I did that with some game at one point where I was like, no, I'm going to activate all the things before I like do the first main. It might have been Breath of the Wild, actually.
You know what? Sounds about right. Also, is definitely not recommended to go into the center of Baghdad, to that big palace that's there. It was heavily guarded, but you know what? We made it happen anyway. Let's talk about some composer follow-up news before we get into the stories this week. Granted, when we're recording, this is going to be about a week out of date, so some recent game news stories may not pop up, but since we haven't talked about headlines for the last couple weeks, let's do some catch-up here. Xbox Game Pass made an announcement of how the rest of their October is shaping up, and not only is Like a Dragon Ishin out today, or as of now, it's got music from Hidenori Shoji. We talked about him on episode 22 for his work on Yakuza 0. Dead Space Remake is coming to EA Play and thus Xbox Game Pass Ultimate on the 26th. And we talked about Dead Space on episode 210. But sadly, Persona 5 Royal, which we talked about on episode 195, goes away from Game Pass on October 31st. Alongside Signalis. So if you want to play that game, you just bought it for yourself. So good timing there. But so go check those out before they go away.
Yeah, literally about an hour ago, I had a coupon to get 25% off of Signalis on Humble, and I bought it because I was like, I want to play it on the Steam Deck. I should just buy it. And then, because I'd had it installed on my PC through Game Pass, I went into the Game Pass app to uninstall it, and only then saw the leaving Game Pass soon notification. So, perfect timing on my part, if I must say so. Meanwhile, Techno Syndrome from Mortal Kombat was sampled in the trailer for Netflix's Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, which will feature music by Anamanaguchi. It's out on November 17th. If they had not told me that is Michael Cera voicing Scott, I would not have known.
Oh, yeah, it sounds different than, like, everyone else sounds like their actors, but Michael Cera, a little different. But yeah, I mean, they even got, like, the vocalist who screams Mortal Kombat back to do, like, a different take on the bellowing the line in the song, but a really weird crossover. That series should be interesting. Just for many reasons.
I'm honestly looking forward to it. It actually looks quite good.
Quite loyal to the graphic novel, so that's neat. And it's been a crazy week in game releases. As of a few days ago from episode release, we're coming off of the release of Marvel's Spider-Man 2 on PlayStation 5 and Super Mario Bros. Wonder on Nintendo Switch. Both reviewing exceptionally highly, both above 90s on Metacritic. Probably hasn't been since 2017 that Nintendo has had like big critical commercial successes for two titles in a year, with actually both Zelda and Mario. But wow, what a year in games. 2023 is shaping up to be a monster.
And also on the 20th, a game called Slay the Princess came out, which is a indie game from the studio that made a visual novel called Scarlet Hollow. It's a horror-ish thing, and the reason I bring that up is because when they announced that they were going to release their game on October 20th, all of the comments were, "Are you sure about that? Is that really the day you want to put your game out?" Because Mario and Spider-Man had already been announced to be coming out that day, so oops.
I mean, Alan Wake 2 slipped its digital-only release to the 27th just to get out of the way, and that might be a big-time heavy hitter as well. Game of the Year nominations are going to be interesting, to say the least. All right, let's talk about the first of our two Konami 4 games this week. And this is, of course, Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots. Not the first time we've talked about Metal Gear on the show before. We talked about Metal Gear Solid 2 in episode 15, 5 in episode 55, Metal Gear Solid 3 in episode 109, Peace Walker in episode 139, and the original Metal Gear Solid in episode 172. If you want to count it, I guess you could also count Metal Gear Rising in episode 7. But MGS4 was released on June 12th, 2008 for PlayStation 3. It was also included as part of the Metal Gear Solid The Legacy Collection, which released on July 9th, 2013. But PlayStation 3 is currently the only place that you can play this game natively. I couch that with saying, for now, we'll get to it. It's more complicated than that. It may not last long that way, but for right now, that's the case. Though, it did used to be briefly available through the PlayStation Now streaming service. Unfortunately, no longer as far as I can tell. And even then, that's streaming. It's not native. The game is developed by Kojima Productions and published by Konami. And like other Metal Gear Solid games, it is a third-person stealth action game. Though the overhead third-person view camera of earlier games in the franchise has been replaced by a more streamlined view and also an over-the-shoulder camera for aiming a weapon, with an optional first-person view, like a first-person shooter, at the toggle of a button. It really is leaning more into the shooting action of the franchise overall, as opposed to, there's still stealth in this game, obviously. You can still stealth your way through it, but definitely leaning a little more into the action. Some new additions include a psyche meter, which means that Snake gets affected by non-lethal means, as well as battlefield psychology, as well as a range of technological tools, including Octo-Camo, Solid Eye, a threat ring, and the Mark II robot. It's more Metal Gear Solid, but a few new tips and tricks along the way. The story is basically the culmination of years of Metal Gear Solid games, so it is complex, but also not very if you've been following the series and its shenanigans. The way to put it most simply, it is 5 years after the events of Metal Gear Solid 2 in the year 2014. Wow, we're almost 10 years removed from that. But Solid Snake is now an old man, and he has about a year left to live because of accelerated aging through his genetic modifications as a clone and the FOXDIE virus that's inside of him. His latest assignment is to assassinate Liquid Ocelot. That is Snake's old foe, Revolver Ocelot, who is possessed by Snake's genetic twin, Liquid Snake, possessed by Liquid Snake's will.
I'm starting to think Metal Gear might be goofy.
Just a little wonky. Anyway, Liquid Ocelot has reemerged from hiding to launch an insurrection against the Patriots, a secret cabal that manipulates global affairs from the shadows. Snake not only learns of Liquid's plans to use the biometrics of their father, Big Boss, to access and take command of the Patriots' firearms control system, but also the FOXDIE virus inside Snake will also mutate within months, spreading to the general populace and causing a deadly pandemic. Why did I forget that part of the game? That's a little weird.
I also forgot that part, actually.
Big question. Can Solid Snake stop Liquid Ocelot's plans to cripple the global war economy filled with private military companies? Can he also break the hold that the Patriots have over the world and do this all before he succumbs to death or becomes patient zero for a FOXDIE pandemic? Joe, this is where I'll ask you, what are our experiences with Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots?
It might have been like 2012 when I played it, 2013. So we were already coming up on it by the time I actually put it at a PS3 to play it. I don't remember a ton. I remember the things that everybody talks about. I remember the microwave hallway. I remember the big, goofy split screen fight with Vamp. I remember having to tail somebody in Paris?
Prague, I think.
Prague, but
Budapest. It's somewhere in Eastern Europe. So,
but I remember doing that mission and getting very frustrated with it to the point where the way that I did it was I just put on the full body Octo camo, and every time the dude turned around, I just laid down on my stomach. And I crawled after that man for a good 15, 20 minutes. Probably less than that. But it got the job done, damn it.
Way to go.
Yeah, it's mostly just the stuff people talk about a lot today. The Russian taunt is probably one of my favorite memes to come out of Metal Gear. I don't know if you're aware of that one.
Maybe not by that name.
In the final fist fight between Snake and Ocelot, at one point Ocelot gives Snake a little kiss. And
yeah.
I guess the usual suspects got really, really mad about that, and they tried to cope and justify themselves oh, he's not doing it because he's gay. He's doing it because it's a Russian taunt. He's actually insulting Snake by doing that. And
got it.
Everybody else, no, man, no. It's the same category of thing as the whole gals being pals thing.
Sure, yeah. I did not play this game when I bought a PlayStation 3. It was actually before that. So it was probably within a few months, actually probably 6 months after this game came out. My roommate at the time had a PS3, and I started playing it a little bit. But I remember I went on a tear and probably played it for 12 hours straight until 1 a.m. to get through Act 4 onto the end. That was, maybe it was part of Act 3. I just remember binging the heck out of it in my first playthrough, and that was a trip. This is not a game I recommend to anyone who hasn't played the series extensively. It's truly just a fan service game, and it tries to pay things off the best it can in the most ridiculous ways possible, but it is incoherent for someone coming in to the Metal Gear Solid series for the first time. For better or for worse. It's great for those who have stuck with it, but not newcomer friendly at all. Good to look back on it, do some research, learn some new things. If you know things about this game, you'll know some of the things I'm about to say. It was also good to just learn more and then confirm some things. So here we go. Despite Hideo Kojima's intentions to end the franchise and leave as its director after Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, fan demand justified a sequel to Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty, and also the fans wanted to have Kojima clear the mysteries that Kojima just wanted to leave to players' interpretations, and this resulted in the making of Metal Gear Solid 4. Another director was announced at first. Fans got really mad. Death threats were involved, so Kojima had to first come on as a co-director and then kind of take over.
Tale as old as time.
Kojima's back again. Kojima wanted to implement a new style of gameplay for the game, though, and have it be set in a full-scale war zone with the power of the PlayStation 3. But he also wanted to still retain the stealth elements from previous entries in the series, and this made the team abandon the original no place to hide concept that I think the game was originally advertised with. The main theme of Metal Gear Solid 4 is sense, and this is defined as someone's understanding of the world that is lost when they die. Throughout the Japanese version, the word will is subtitled as sense. So it's really more like the definition of will, like someone's will. But this is translated just as will in the English version of the game. Kojima's initial ending for Guns of the Patriots would entail Snake and Otacon turning themselves in for breaking the law and subsequently convicted and executed.
Oh my God.
What a way to possibly end the series, though this was avoided after negative feedback from the development team.
Boy, I would assume so. You know, I have a great idea for our long-awaited, possibly finale. What if we ended it by putting our characters in front of a firing squad?
Yeah, right? Like, is Kojima saying once and for all, I'm done, and then he wasn't. Just go on and focus on a different Snake character. Something that became an issue throughout development and even beyond release was console exclusivity. Kojima specifically stated that, quote, an Xbox 360 version will not be released because an Xbox 360 version of MGS4 hasn't gone on sale. I guess that's how that works.
I mean, that is true, I guess.
He also says that, quote, the amount of data in MGS4 is just too enormous. I feel like that's more of the reason, with Xbox 360 games still sticking to DVD versus the Blu-ray disc of PlayStation. The budget for the game has been estimated to be between $50 and $70 million, but Kenichiro Imaizumi from Kojima Productions denied this, stating that if it had cost this much, the game would have been for multiple platforms. Metal Gear Solid 4 was first publicly announced at E3 2005, and it was essentially finished by January 2008, with then thorough testing in its beta being done before its June 2008 release. The big thing that I remember about this game is how it installed data in between acts. And this was because early hard drive sizes, if you might remember for the PlayStation 3, were only so big at about 40 or 80 gigabytes, depending on the SKU. And this was the first PS3 game to use a dual-layer 50 gigabyte Blu-ray disc. So in order to not take up almost the entire or more than the whole hard drive space on the PlayStation 3, the game would install an act and then delete that data and install the next act. And it would be a whole lengthy thing of Snake smoking, or you'd get this debriefing that would try to mitigate the time. But God, it was a whole thing just to try to make that all work. Though as PlayStation 3 hard drive sizes got bigger over time, a patch that released in August 2012 not only finally added support for trophies, because that wasn't a thing in PlayStation's ecosystem at the launch of the game, but it also allowed a full install of the game onto the hard drive to remove the installs and deletes between acts.
I think that had come out by the time I played, at the very least, because I don't remember having to install the game between acts.
Oh man, it broke things up for sure, and it's just a sign of the times. Metal Gear Solid 4 also included the starter pack for Metal Gear Online 2, which was an online multiplayer mode, though that mode was shut down in June 2012. The game reviewed very well, with a Metacritic average of 94. The game received praise for its gameplay, graphics, characters, and emotional weight, while criticism centered on its convoluted plot and its heavy emphasis on long cutscenes. Boy, those are some long, sometimes movie-sized cutscenes.
I think the last cutscene in the game is legitimately like a feature-length film.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's insane. And thank goodness they put a pause in it, but at a time where you couldn't suspend action. You're in it for the long haul, is probably why I was just burning that midnight oil. The game really helped kick off PlayStation 3 console sales. It kind of gave it the kick in the pants that it needed, by mid 2008, after its fall 2006 launch. So the whole PS3 has no games kind of thing, it really got things going. Metal Gear Solid 4 sold 6 million copies worldwide by 2014, and it made it the 6th best-selling game on the platform. Pop quiz time, Joe! Name the 5 other games that are ahead of Metal Gear Solid 4 as far as PlayStation 3 game releases and sales.
Are we talking exclusives, or do multi-platform games count?
Multi-platform games count.
Obviously, there's a Call of Duty on there, I would assume.
Surprisingly, no. Call of
Really?
Duty Modern Warfare 2 sold 4.8 million copies on PS3. Granted, this was also the time of Xbox 360, partnership and deals, so that's probably why it's skewed that way. But it's 12th, tied for 12th on the list.
Let me think about games that I at least associate on the PS3. I mean, I'm gonna assume Little Big Planet's not on there.
Little Big Planet is number 19 at 3 million copies sold.
That's what I figured.
I'll let you know that one developer has 3 of the 5.
Oh, God. Is God of War 3 one of them?
God of War 3 is number 10 at 5.2 million.
Damn. Which developer is it? Can I get that hint? Or would that give it way away?
Their logo is a big footprint.
Oh, I don't remember who has a logo that way.
Or should I say a paw print?
Oh. So, Uncharted 2.
Uncharted 2, number 5.
Yep, there you go. And then The Last of Us would be in there as well.
The Last of Us is number 3.
Is Uncharted 3 one?
Uncharted 3 is number 4.
Okay, so that's all the Naughty Dog games.
What's the best-selling game of all time that isn't a notch PC game?
I should genuinely know this. Why am I blanking this hard? Because I feel like instinctively I would have said Modern Warfare 2, but that's not right.
What's still hitting top 10s in NPD numbers today? A 2013 game release.
I got nothing. I am...
Number 2 is Gran Turismo 5, which I did not think sold that much on PS3.
I would not have guessed that.
That was at 11.95 million. The Naughty Dogs were all in the high 6s, low 7s. And at 29.52 million copies sold, Grand Theft Auto 5.
God. Oh my god, I should have known that. Okay.
And that is your little mini game of best-selling PlayStation 3 games.
Why did GTA not even come to mind?
It's just lasted throughout the generations, and you don't think about it as being an original PS3 release.
Kinda, I guess, yeah.
Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots won Game of the Year awards from outlets like GameSpot, 1UP, and Fox News Channel? Shocked to learn that in the information about awards, Fox News Channel gave Metal Gear Solid 4 their award for Game of the Year and Best PlayStation 3 Game. You do know Metal Gear Solid 4 has an anti-war messaging throughout it, right?
I was going to say, yeah, they know that this game is super against the concept of war. They must not.
But what's media literacy anyway? MGS4 was nominated for Artistic Achievement and Original Score at the BAFTAs. It was nominated for 7 Interactive Achievement Awards, we now know these as the DICE Awards, including Game of the Year and Character Performance by David Hayter for Solid Snake, but it won Outstanding Achievement in Original Music Composition. The game and its legacy, it received new content through PlayStation Network, through 2008 and 2009, with a total of 49 free add-ons that were released, including 25 additional Octo Camo patterns, 12 podcasts, and 12 iPod songs. We'll get there. There was a 13th song named Chair Race that was removed for copyright reasons in 2011, though the DLC was delisted in July 2014. There were crossovers and tie-ins with a Metal Gear Solid Touch mobile game. There was an Altair outfit in Metal Gear Solid 4 to cross-promote with Assassin's Creed. There's a character in Map Pack in Little Big Planet, and even a themed version of the board game Risk. But obviously, Metal Gear Solid would continue with 2010's Peace Walker for PSP. And we're talking about the game today because Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 1 releases today on all major platforms, though this only contains the original Metal Gear Solid, 2 Sons of Liberty, and 3 Snake Eater. But rumors, website metadata, and the collection's title of Volume 1 points to the existence of a Volume 2, which would likely include Metal Gear Solid 4, Peace Walker, and 5. We'll just have to see if and when that ever gets announced, and if MGS4 will leave the PS3.
But what about Survive? Where's Metal Gear Survive?
You gotta put Revengeance on there if you're gonna do that, baby.
I would legitimately take like a new remaster of Revengeance like tomorrow. I would buy it.
Oh, it'd be amazing. So good. All right, let's talk about the composer for Metal Gear Solid 4. And one of the composers on that composing team, her name is Nobuko Toda. Nobuko Toda was born on November 18th, 1972 in Tokyo. She is blood type A. She is also gone by the alias Irone Toda on certain projects, some more recently, I suppose, but also goes by that name. Nobuko Toda started composing at the age of 4 on the piano and the electric organ by putting music to picture books and nursery tales. I think that is so cute. She has received many accommodations for her music since her studies at Berklee College of Music, including applause from film score maestro John Williams. Her biography says, quote, "Her music style integrates electronic instruments with dynamic, lyrical orchestration." And she started working with Konami in 2003. But in 2010, Toda established music production company Film Score LLC, which is based in Tokyo and Los Angeles. Says that she is also interested in the education of young composers. And you can follow her on Twitter at Nobuko Toda. Her discography: she has composed music for games like Boktai 2, Solar Boy Django. In the Metal Gear Solid series, she worked on 3, Acid, Acid 2, 4, and Peace Walker. There's also Pro Evolution Soccer 2010 and 2011, Lollipop Chainsaw, Final Fantasy XIV Online: A Realm Reborn, and Night Cry. She was a score producer or score orchestrator for Halo 4, The Evil Within and The Evil Within 2, Metal Gear Solid 5, Halo 5 Guardians, and Marvel's Iron Man VR. And she was also a music director for Killer is Dead and most recently, Ghostwire Tokyo. Nobuko Toda was also on the arrangement team for the Super Smash Bros. Franchise, and so when we have a composer that did remixes for Smash, we like to highlight those tracks in particular. That's just our Smash Brothers background. So on 3DS and Wii U, she worked on Battlefield, Super Smash Bros. Melee, and Egg Planet from Super Mario Galaxy. In Ultimate, she arranged remixes for Counterattack from Xenoblade Chronicles 2, of course, Snake Eater, Bomb Man from Mega Man, as well as Fireman from Mega Man, and Crash Man from Mega Man 2. There was also Dist Thins Out and Karma from Tekken 6, Desperate Struggle from Tekken 7, and title theme from Wii Sports Club. The score to Metal Gear Solid 4 was led by Harry Gregson Williams. We talked about him on episode 15 of the show for his work on Metal Gear Solid 2, because 4 was his third Metal Gear Solid soundtrack. 2, 3, 4. And of course, Nobuko Toda also handled the big brunt of the composing alongside Harry Gregson Williams. There were other contributors that were Konami employees, including Shuichi Kobori, Kazuma Jinochi, Akihiro Honda, who we talked about on episode 139, and Sota Fujimori. Gem Impact employees Norihiko Hibino, who we talked about on episode 43, Yoshitaka Suzuki, talked about him on episode 118, and Takahiro Izutani. They all also made compositions late in the game's production. Before the release of the game, Metal Gear Solid 4 Theme of Love Super Smash Bros. Brawl version was provided for Super Smash Bros. Brawl in the Shadow Moses Island stage. That came out. That was a big deal, kind of tied alongside Snake being in Brawl. And then we have this song from MGS4 that this game and the song hasn't come out yet, but here it is. That was certainly a thing, a more upbeat, battle-ready version of the song, to be sure, as we'll hear shortly. The Metal Gear Solid main theme, famously composed by Tapi Iwase, was notably omitted from the soundtrack, as well as the soundtrack to Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops, due to Konami's sensitivity to Russian plagiarism accusations, which we talked about during that Metal Gear Solid episode. That was this time, and cutting that track not only from those Metal Gear Solid games, but also the song's possible inclusion in Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Through a marketing collaboration, Apple computers and monitors feature in the game, and an Apple iPod is an in-game item that Snake can use to change the background music, listen to in-game podcasts, and collect hidden songs scattered throughout the game. An idea that would definitely be carried forward into Metal Gear Solid 5 as you find those classic 80s tunes. And the official soundtrack was released on May 28th, 2008, so before the game came out, by Konami Digital Entertainment. Alright, let's get to the music for Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots. And the first track we have to include, obviously, has to be this one. Critical track number 1 is called Old Snake. Man, what a great theme. Had to be here to start out this list, and it's composed by Harry Gregson Williams. Old Snake is the title screen theme, especially at that beginning when you're installing the data and gotta kind of soak that all in. It's also played technically at the end of the final boss. It's kind of the opening theme for the game, to be sure. It wouldn't become, the main theme. We'll get to that shortly, but it's definitely a theme that represents the mood of this game. Not only, how desolate and desperate Snake feels as his age is rapidly catching up to him, but just, how he feels at the end of his life and what he must do and one more mission kind of thing. That ukulele or whatever that stringed instrument is to play that melody is just haunting, with the kind of electronic backbeat going under it. And then you get the orchestration going in like Harry Gregson Williams can only do in just his style for Metal Gear. It's so good, and it has to be here to start out this list.
Yeah, this is a very, very good song. I don't remember a ton of the general soundtrack of Metal Gear Solid 4, but there are multiple, I guess, like 4 or 5 tracks that I do remember, and this is definitely one of them. I do like that it is a mix of like the guitar that you're going to hear in a couple other places on the soundtrack, but then also this electronic sort of backing almost. It feels more electronic, but I think it's just a bass.
Absolutely. I mean, there's got to be some electronics going throughout this soundtrack. If Nano Machine's son is driving the plot, of course, we continue in Metal Gear Rising there with that Senator Armstrong quote, but really started with MGS4, like that Nano Machines can explain everything away. It can keep people that are dying from cancer alive. Make it make sense.
It can turn people into vampires.
Apparently. Sure can. It sure can. Well, it's not the Super Smash Bros. Brawl version, but the love theme has to be here in the Critical 5, and we've got it here at number 2 for Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots, and this is aptly titled Love Theme. Fallout has war. War never changes, but Solid Snake in Metal Gear Solid 4 says, war has changed. And talking about how it's all private military companies and how this is the global war economy now, as this theme just weaves its way throughout the long intro to Metal Gear Solid 4. And what a vocal performance by Jackie Presti as she sings in Hebrew, as seems to be the case. Remember the ending theme, The Best Is Yet to Come to Metal Gear Solid? That's in Hebrew. Well, the Hebrew continues here as the game opens in the Middle East. This piece is composed by Nobuko Toda. And wow, you definitely, if you know the Brawl version and how different it sounds, this is just more drawn out, more dramatic, more dynamic with this. You talk about vocal lyricism. I mean, when you get someone actually singing, that really, really brings it out. And for this to essentially be the game's main theme, the love theme, it's powerful. You get some of the leitmotifs going throughout the game, not to a huge extent, but this is a powerful intro with powerful visuals, and it kind of just wallops you right from the beginning.
So obviously the Brawl version has a closer place in my heart. It's the first Metal Gear Solid song I ever heard ever.
Wow.
Just in general. Because I didn't play Metal Gear Solid until I was an adult. I want to say I was like 19, 20 years old when I finally sat down and played all 4 games that existed up to that point. Well, I guess there were 5 games because Peace Walker had already come out, and I love that these conversations never include portable ops.
Right. Who's Gene anyway?
Ever at any point. But I do very much still like this version. What string instrument is that? It doesn't feel deep enough to be a cello, but it might just be a cello. I might just be nuts.
It might be. It is hard to tell, yeah.
My personal guess would probably be a viola? Maybe? Because that one can go lower than a violin, but it's not quite the rumbly feeling of a cello. I don't know. Whatever it is my favorite part of the song, and it is absolutely fantastic throughout. And yeah, this is another one of those songs where oh yeah, I remember this one. Brawl helps, but I remember this one outside of that too.
For sure, and it's really tough to just pick a lick from it. I love the vocal performance, but you're right. When it's just the orchestration, it's the da 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 da. Like it's just so good. Wow. A different song altogether, though, and one that you'll definitely hear early on, especially if you're bad at the game like me. One that really stuck out for me was number 3 here on the Critical 5 for MGS4, and this is Gecko. So the Gecko, spelled Gekko. It's not like any insurance selling lizards or little ones that crawl around and look all cute. No, these are little mobile, almost Metal Gear-like machines, but with big synthetic organic-like legs that really make it kind of tall and top heavy. To be honest, you gotta kind of just tie them around and knock them down. Also, they moo. They moo like cows.
I was gonna ask, I don't remember. Is there ever like an explanation given to why they do that?
Not that I remember, but it's certainly memorable. And as you're going there through Act 1 in the Middle East, coming across characters like, oh, hi, Meryl and your rat patrol, and who are you, Drebin, with this smoking monkey? You're coming across encounters with the Gecko and trying to stay away from them. But if you're not great at stealth, you're going to hear this theme, and it's pretty catchy early on, but it's also memories of being riddled with anxiety while it plays, and just done really, really well, composed by Harry Gregson Williams. And yeah, this is one that kind of defined my experience very early on.
I don't remember how bad I did at that section. And all I can think about is the mooing. Now that it's been brought up, that's all I can think of. They show up in Brawl, too.
Oh, yeah. A Gecko appears behind, that's right, the Shadow Moses stage.
Yeah, they still moo, and I didn't get it then, and I still don't get it now. But this is one of my favorite songs on the soundtrack, just in general, just because of the energy it has. I mean, it makes sense just being a, encounter theme in general, but, overall, this is the vibe I think about when I think about Metal Gear. So this fits perfectly well.
And it really lines up with a lot of the songs on the soundtrack. It's Harry Gregson Williams just kind of keeping this kind of energy. But as things get turned up at the end of the game for the big dramatics, we kind of have to wrap up the whole franchise, at least at the time. And what better song to do that than critical track number 4 here for MGS4. This is Metal Gear Saga. While a lot of this piece borrows from the Metal Gear Solid 3 main theme track that we've covered before in that Metal Gear Solid 3 episode, it's this clip here, the end of the piece, that really goes for the big dramatics, the trumpet coming in, the big orchestration, and it's that kind of big culminating moment that not only gets repurposed in different Metal Gear YouTubers videos and things like that, just kind of a way to represent the end of the franchise again at the time, but it really sets up the big moment of the final boss battle. See, this piece is composed by Harry Gregson Williams, so it makes sense, his work kind of continuing for the last few games of the franchise, right? And so what better way, again, spoilers for a 15-year-old game, but you probably should know at this point. After 5 minutes of cutscene of Liquid Ocelot and Snake just slugging it out in a brutal CQC with, it's two old men fighting. It's not the prettiest, but it's brutal, all right. This clip represents the conversion from, oh, they're so evenly matched, to let's grab nanomachines, stick it in each other's neck, and the health bars pop up in Metal Gear Solid original font with Solid, Snake, and Liquid. And what kicks off a long multi-stage fight where it's a weird 3D Tekken-like fighting game, in a way incredibly rudimentary, but going through the eras with the changing music after all this. But it's this musical swell that kind of kicks that all off, and it just is one of those memorable final boss moments of the era, especially.
It sure is a fight that happens before that, huh?
Mm-hmm.
That's where the Russian taunt happens, everybody.
Yeah.
But I don't remember much more of that. I do remember that, is it during the fist fight that it starts sort of like transitioning between the styles of all the Metal Gear games?
Yep. So it's the different phases of the fight. Yeah, that it changes the life bars and the fonts and the music going. It's Tanker Incident from MGS2, Snake Eater from 3, and then Old Snake from MGS4. It's such a slog, but it's so cool. Again, it's one of those things like, if you're a new player playing this for the first time, it means nothing to you, but if you've given years to the franchise, it's the ultimate payoff.
Yeah, it is quite cool. I mean, even if you haven't if you're like me and you played all 4 games within the span of like a month.
Oh, yeah.
Then it works quite well. The point is, you need to have played 1 through 3 before you touch this game.
Have to.
As has been mentioned several times today. But yeah, I remember this song in particular, but I don't generally remember like the sequence outside of the fist fight.
Yeah, and that's probably because the game still goes on for a couple more hours after the final boss. So there's that.
It's generous to say the game goes on.
Right, the movie, the Kojima auteur film director movie takes over. Anyway, let's wrap up the Critical 5 with the song that plays during the end credits. And this song from MGS4 is called Here's to You.
Oh, here's to you, Nicola and Bart. Rest forever here in our hearts. The last and final moment is yours, and agony is your triumph. Here's to
Here's to You is a song that was originally composed by Ennio Morricone and Joan Baez, though for this purpose it is arranged by Harry Gregson Williams, and the vocals are performed by Lisbeth Scott. Here's to You plays during the end credits, and the song is originally from the film Sacco I Vanzetti. The original arrangement of that song, by the way, would be featured in Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes, for what it's worth. Quote, the song's lyrics reference the deaths of Italian-born U.S. anarchists Nicola Sacco and Bartolomeo Vanzetti during the 1920s. In particular, how they were believed to have been wrongly executed by a United States court ruling due to their anarchist views, rather than whether they had actually committed the crimes they were accused of. So, Hideo Kojima was really taken with this, commissioned it to be the end credits theme, and as a result, lyrics of "Here's to you, Nicola and Bart, rest forever here in our hearts," has just stuck with me for years. It's a piece that is rather repetitive, but just keeps upping its dramatic stakes and really hammers home that point. But it makes me wonder if it was tied to that original intended ending for Snake and Otacon instead of Sako and Vincenti.
Oh, that's a good point. I wonder how long that ending concept lasted, and if Harry Gregson Williams ever read that draft. I think I used this song in the credits of a podcast that, God willing, has been buried in the earth, during a milestone episode or something. I think this might be the first time I had heard Ennio Morricone's name. I know a lot more about him now, obviously, but I forgot this was in the game until just now, despite the fact that, again, I have used this version in things before and have listened to this version quite a bit, and it just slipped my mind that it's here. It's very good.
Yeah. I mean, there you go. It just shows its power and impact, and it definitely should be here. Now, I've got a couple tracks on the cutting room floor, and these were tracks that, stood out to me as oh yeah, I remember this moment, or I remember this musical lick, but just not strong enough to make the critical 5. And so the first of these will start with Laughing Octopus. Lot of cool rhythmic things going on here, the electronic sounds at the end, and it's the first boss battle against Laughing Octopus of the Beauty and the Beast core. Oh, you didn't think we were gonna, not talk about this group of ladies here in the game, did you?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's telling that they're not even included in your brief summary of the game.
I mean, they're 4 bosses that are traumatized, and Liquid Ocelot sends them against Snake to kind of get in his way, but they don't really have much more point beyond that with Laughing Octopus and Raging Raven, Crying Wolf, Screaming Mantis. Oh, look, they all tie back to original Metal Gear Solid characters. Isn't that interesting with Foxhound? But they're models, at least they're modeled off of models, and they've got weird trauma. Anyway, in this battle, you're kind of being stalked by this character who has a lot of camo and will take you by surprise in this house. And it's kind of a dual battle of wits there, but beating her gets you the face camo item that kind of completes the octo camo look. And this piece is composed by Nobuko Toda, Shuichi Kobori, and Kazuma Jinochi. It's just a really cool piece. I remember having a tough time with this first boss battle and the just kind of sticking in my head and kind of reawaken some boss battle trauma there.
God, the B&B core is so stupid. They are the definition of, these characters are in the game because we wouldn't have boss fights otherwise. And that's the only reason.
And if you do the non-lethal means, it turns into a weird posing photo shoot. Kojima, why?
It's so weird. They're so they are the weakest part of the game, which I think MGS4 has a lot of kind of weak parts overall, but they are by far the weakest part.
For sure. And not a lot of great other boss themes, but this one stuck out to me. The other track that stands out is on the cutting room floor here, and this is called Desperate Chase. In hindsight, Father and Son is also a really good one that probably should have been here. A track that plays in that movie-like epilogue, shall we say. But this piece in particular, composed by Harry Gregson Williams, plays during the back half of the motorcycle ride through Eastern Europe in Act 3, where Big Mama is driving, and you're her boy, riding passenger, doing this whole turret kind of shooting sequence, really, again, just leaning into the action, the shooting action that this game really wanted to be, with all of the choreography and, you know, sort of set pieces going on here. This music's really cool. Kind of reminds me weirdly of like Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, oddly enough. Not that like Crush 40's doing the orchestration for this, but the kind of vibe it gets going, especially when like the MGS3 rockin' guitar comes in later in the piece with a dun 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 dun. Like there's a lot of Snake Eater energy here, and justifiably so.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is it's exactly on the nose of being like just the motorcycle chase song or music. I guess there's multiple pieces from MGS3.
Oh, yeah, sure. Similar to Taking on the Shagohod, right?
Yeah, like, honestly, that's probably on purpose, I would assume, considering you are who you're riding with and all that.
Uh-huh.
So...
callbacks, it's all what this game's about.
Oh, this is callbacks to the video game, and this is no exception, and I think this is one of the better ones at the very least.
I agree with you there. What will I never forget about Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots? So many cool moments, so many spoilery things, and we might as well say the Rex and Ray fight was the stupidest yet coolest thing. Just appearing on Shadow Moses Island, to have to go back to that and have the hallucination kind of like wake up from a dream sequence and have like the texture of Snake's face like change. All of the Shadow Moses stuff was the coolest, and it just starts this whole ending sequence that I was just hooked into and could not stop playing. Must be nice to be in college and do that when you have no other responsibilities. But wow, I will never forget that. Such a soft spot for the Metal Gear Solid franchise, and it's a shame that things have spiraled out with Kojima and Konami the way it has. I just really want this game to be playable again. Not to like revisit it and be like, oh, remember how good it is? Honestly, if I played it again, I'd probably notice the many things that are not great about it. But it's not a game that should be locked on a console at a time.
Man, take me back to those college days.
Yeah, right?
I would kill to go back there. I think it's mainly just the things that meme a lot nowadays. Like the microwave hallway is definitely up there. I haven't thought about the B&B core in years, and now that's all I can think about is how stupid they are.
Mm-hmm.
Legitimately, people who have not played this game, you could remove them entirely from the game and it would change nothing.
Oh, for sure. You could get the items in different ways, yeah.
That's how little impact they have on the story. I feel like it's one I need to play again, but I also agree with you that I feel like going back to play it again, I'm probably going to notice a few things I like not as much as I would have like 10 years ago or so. But who knows, honestly. We're going to have to get there first.
Yeah, that's saying something for sure. All right, to transition to our next Konami 4 game, let's talk about a fan cover, a fan remix, whether it's on YouTube, OC Remix, wherever. YouTuber Lawrence Manning, she spells it with Laurence. She does an amazing job on this solo piano take on Metal Gear Saga, and kind of playing this part of the clip that's more reminiscent of the Metal Gear Solid 3 main theme, but I think it's just remarkable, and what a way to close out the franchise at the time. So please enjoy that, and we'll be right back.
Speaking of games that I should probably not look fondly on, and I don't in this case, let's talk about Silent Hill 4: The Room, which released for the PlayStation 2 on June 17th, 2004 in Japan, and in the West it released on PS2 and Xbox, I forgot it released on Xbox until now, on September 7th, 2004 in North America, and then about a week and a half later on September 17th, 2004 in Europe. It was developed by Team Silent and published by Konami, and it has the distinction of being the final game to be made by Team Silent before the team got shut down. Like Silent Hill 2, which we talked about back in Original Soundchat episode 38, and Silent Hill 3, which we talked about in episode 92. Before it, Silent Hill 4 is a survival horror game, largely plays in third person, pretty much like every other game in its genre. If you've ever seen a third-person survival horror game, you've seen how Silent Hill 4 plays, because they all play like that. Well, Resident Evil doesn't, but I guess Silent Hill's about to play like Resident Evil now too, huh? Based on that footage they showed us of the remake. Oh boy. But the main way that Silent Hill 4 differs from the rest of the games of the series is the addition of an area, your apartment 302 to be specific, that is played entirely in first person. And this apartment contains the only save point in the game, the only item storage in the game, and it serves as a hub for the game. That's right, this Silent Hill game has a hub. For better or for worse, mostly that second one. For most of the game, going back to the apartment will heal the player, but later on, the apartment can become cursed and develop various hauntings, and standing too close to these hauntings will instead do the opposite and take away your health little by little. And these hauntings can be dispelled by lighting a candle in front of them, which candles are a limited resource in the game, there's only so many. Or you can equip a talisman to protect yourself from the haunting's effects, but these are temporary and will eventually break, and if I remember correctly, they break pretty damn fast. So, in Silent Hill 4, you play as Henry Townshend, a normal, everyday man who has found himself locked inside his apartment with no way to communicate with the outside world. The most iconic imagery from this game is the door with all the chains on it, and "Don't go out" written on it. And that's the front door of his apartment. Cannot open it because of those chains. And not only that, but any attempt to communicate with the outside world, such as through his windows or through the door, nobody can hear him. His only real connections to the outside world to be able to see what is happening are, obviously, what he can see out the windows, his peephole, which, when you look in the peephole, occasionally people will be outside your door doing stuff. I'm pretty sure one of them is like your landlord trying to figure out why you haven't left in days. And eventually you will discover a hole in the wall of the apartment that looks into your neighbor's apartment, a young lady named Eileen Galvin. None of these allow you to communicate with anything, but they do allow you to see what is happening outside of the apartment to an extent. Eventually, a massive dark hole opens up in the wall of his bathroom, and being logical, Henry climbs into it, which I guess if I was stuck in my apartment for 5 full days and genuinely could not leave or communicate, I would also risk jumping into a hole. It would have to take a few more days, I feel like. I would have to hit the point where food is now a problem.
Right.
But he goes in there, and it happens to lead into an alternate reality starting with an abandoned subway station. And it's through these various alternate worlds that Henry encounters multiple people, the first of which being Cynthia Velasquez. And one by one, the people he encounters meet their end, and Henry soon realizes that at some point, Eileen will be the next target. So the questions are, can Henry escape his apartment, or will the isolation and hauntings grind him down? What is Eileen's connection to all this? What is the connection between Henry's current experiences and the killing spree of deceased serial killer Walter Sullivan? And who was the previous tenant of his apartment who seems to have been investigating said serial killings? And this is where I will ask, what are your experiences with this? I'm going to try and not be too mean. What are your experiences with this video game that exists?
I don't know too much about Silent Hill 4, to be honest, but Henry Townsend is one of those names that it's like, I would have never been able to pull that from my memory, but you say that and it's like, oh, that is the video game protagonist name, isn't it? I don't know too much about this game, honestly. I'm honestly mostly shocked that this came out in 2004, and that means that, we had Silent Hill 2 in 2001, and we've talked about Silent Hill 3 on the show. Was it 2002 or 2003? But Konami was churning those sequels out pretty quickly, huh?
Yeah, we're gonna, as will be covered here in a second, I'll just go ahead and say this. Silent Hill 4 and 3 were in development at the same time.
Makes sense.
For me, I hate this game. Now, I'm not going to say that there is no redeeming quality whatsoever to this game. I think the apartment is a really cool tech demo that they stapled to a bad game. The apartment is genuinely really cool. And in fact, like a month ago, I loaded up House Flipper for some reason, and they have a bunch of houses that are like references to other stuff. Like you can get the apartment from Friends, both of them, the house from Breaking Bad, the house from Home Alone, etc., etc. One of them is a recreation of Apartment 402.
Oh, interesting.
Or Apartment 302, sorry. It's called 402 in House Flipper so as to avoid lawsuits.
Interesting. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, it was a really, really good recreation, too. I guess it was their Halloween house for 1 year. I don't know when it would have been added. But that was like the last time I thought about Silent Hill 4. The time before that was when I played Silent Hill 4, which I talked about it on this show while I was doing so. It's not good. I remember the person that got me into Silent Hill is Pat Bovon, of the former Super Best Friends. Now he does things under the name Pat Stares At. And he, loves Silent Hill. He's played all of them, including the bad ones. And by he loves Silent Hill, I mean he loves Silent Hill 1, 2, and 3, and maybe Shattered Memories. But he, at one point on their podcast, mentioned that he had never finished Silent Hill 4. He had tried multiple times and he just never finished it. And now I know why, because I did. And it's just... they wanted to put a higher emphasis on combat, and it doesn't work. It has the worst enemy type I've ever experienced in a horror game, which are ghosts that you cannot damage. They can go through walls, they move very quickly, and they do damage if they touch you. Which is really great, especially in the latter half of the game, when you're doing an escort mission, where how much damage your escorted character takes decides what ending you get. Silent Hill 4 is not a very good game. If they just cut out all of the stuff that's not in the apartment. It does have one very fun scare that I really, really like, though. So you can look into Eileen's apartment, and it's a very, very limited point of view, and sometimes she's like sweeping. Sometimes she's just laying in bed looking at something, or just you can hear her just off frame or something like that. But she has a little plush of Robbie the Rabbit in her room, which Robbie the Rabbit is the rabbit mascot of the theme park that you visit in Silent Hill 3.
That's right. Yep.
And its back is turned to you the whole time. But if you look in enough times, eventually it turns itself around and is just staring at the hole. And that's a pretty fun little jump scare there. There are some good things in this game. It's just the game around it really sucks. It's unfortunately concrete proof that, like, as much as people reminisce about the Team Silent days of the franchise, they weren't untouchable. And not everything they put out was a winner. So, talking about the development of Silent Hill 4, there is actually a very popular myth around the development of the game, which is that it did not start out as a Silent Hill game. It was a different horror game, a different IP, all that. This is not true at all. It was always meant to be a Silent Hill game in some form. It didn't start out as Silent Hill 4. I think they had originally started the project assuming it would be a spin-off, but then it obviously became Silent Hill 4. And like I said, it was in development alongside Silent Hill 3, both of which started development immediately following the completion of Silent Hill 2. And the reason it feels so different, though, which is, I think, the main reason why a lot of people come to the conclusion that it must not have been a Silent Hill game from the start, is that they wanted to do that. They wanted to take the series in a different direction than 1, 2, and 3, and they sure, I guess, accomplished that in some form. Mostly because 1 through 3 were good. I'm gonna stop being really mean to the game because I don't think that's fair. But the working title during development was Room 302, which is, of course, Henry's apartment. That's where he lives. The main concept behind the game, though, was to establish your apartment as the safest part of your world, and then slowly make it a dangerous place to be in. And it's in first person because they felt by doing so, that would make it feel more personal, but also kind of make it feel a bit more claustrophobic. I don't see the second one so much, but I think the first one is definitely a very good point on that. The second half of the game is a revisit to all the areas you explored in the first half, now with an added escort mission that, again, decides what ending you get. But they claim it's in order to, quote, show the changes undergone by each character introduced in the locations. The only changes I can think about is the characters you see die in the first half of the game come back as ghosts in the second half of the game. So they get demonstrably worse.
Also, it's a way to just pad the length of the game.
Yeah, you didn't have to make more assets. I genuinely do not believe the reason they give. 100% I do not. The inspirations for the game, as always, Jacob's Ladder is up there. That is the movie that inspired all of the Team Silent Hill games, that inspired Silent Hill in general. But also the novels House of Leaves, which I really want to read, actually. I've heard multiple people talk about it, and it sounds really cool. Not gonna lie. Rosemary's Baby and Coin Locker Babies, which was a Japanese novel about a baby being abandoned in a coin locker in Japan. Twin Peaks was also a big inspiration. They also looked at the works of Stephen King, which, again, is kind of a Silent Hill-wide thing. And the 2000 film, The Cell, which I barely know anything about, but the little I do know, that checks out. And Henry's appearance is apparently loosely based on actor Peter Krause, who I'm not familiar with. I looked him up, and yeah, that sure looks like Henry, I guess. And that's as far as I got. I did not recognize a single damn thing he was in. One thing that I found during research, I found a pre-release interview about Silent Hill 4, and one of the responses just sort of felt, in retrospect, kind of sad. Being the interviewer asks, the room is obviously different from previous games of the series, much more psychological, being enclosed in one room. Will this kind of thing continue in future Silent Hill games? To which director Tsubayama says, no, we won't keep this trend for the following sequels. And boy, you won't, because you didn't make any after this. It reviewed well when it came out, by the way, might I add. It has a score of 76 on consoles, so like not exceedingly well, but it was still received generally well. Though it has a 67 on PC, because the PC port was apparently really, really, really rough when it first came out. I think the version you can buy on GOG now, I didn't notice any of the problems I saw the reviews like citing. So maybe they cleaned it up in some way? I don't really know. But in case you want to play this game for whatever reason, you can buy it on GOG, DRM free. Good luck. A lot of criticism, though, was given to the idea of having both the item storage and save point be in one single area and not having any of them elsewhere. Because, one, there's no ability to discard unwanted items while you're outside of the apartment. You just have to go back to the apartment and put your stuff in the storage locker and then go back to where you were. But also, the same goes for the save point. You want to stop playing for now? Well, make your way back to the apartment and save. It adds a little bit of bloat to the game in general. The game's higher focus on combat was also a point of contention. Again, like I said, I don't think they changed the combat from being the purposely clunky thing it is in 2 and 3, but they seem to think they did, and that doesn't work well. And of course, critics and players alike were not really fans of the second half of the game just being a retread of the first half. Though, Wikipedia cited a quote from the Game Informer review that baffles me to no end. It is, quote, disarming voyeurism, bizarre camera angles, and exceptionally well-placed tension is what the series has been trying to do all along, but The Room is the first entry to do it right. Gonna have to disagree with you, Game Informer of 2004. But I also did see a quote by Akira Yamaoka, because he was asked about some of the characters at some point, I guess, and his response on record was that he personally felt they were, quote, a little weak. That is not to say that Akira Yamaoka dislikes this game. I don't know. I've never asked him about it. I've never talked to him. But I did find that slightly vindicating, at least, that in some form, Akira Yamaoka at least partially agrees with me. It was nominated for GameStop's 2004 Best Adventure Game Award, but it lost that award to Myst 4 Revelation. This was, again, back in the day. We say this when we go back this far, usually. Game awards weren't like a huge thing yet. Especially in terms of, like, putting together the Japanese and Western parts of the industry. Europe kind of had its own stuff. North America kind of had its own stuff. Japan kind of just had its own stuff. And that's how game awards worked.
Very magazine and website centric.
Yeah. And of course, like I said, after this, Team Silent would be shuttered, and development of Silent Hill titles would begin to be contracted out to Western studios, largely studios in Europe. Very few of them were well received. In fact, I'm pretty sure the only one people look fondly back on is Shattered Memories. And the series died as a result. Then yada yada, PT, yada yada yada. We've talked about PT before.
Silent Hills.
But finally, after all this time, Silent Hill seems to be reviving, maybe with too many things, actually.
Yeah.
Because, like, about a year ago, they announced, 5 new games of various types?
Between that and Netflix and things like that. Yeah, there's If, there's the 2 remake, there's...
Town?
Oh, yeah, uh-huh. There's like a live action. There's so much. Yeah,
they announced a lot of Silent Hill stuff, and I feel like it might actually be too much for a series that has been dead for like 15 years. But who knows? I'm personally cautiously optimistic about the Silent Hill 2 remake. It's being made by Bloober Team, whom I'm not a big fan of their work. But maybe they'll stick to the script. God, I hope they just stick to the script. As much as I don't like remakes being 1-to-1, I think in this case I would prefer it be 1-to-1 than Bloober Team add anything to it. But I'm also like really interested in If, even though it doesn't make sense. Silent Hill has always been a series about like Western American, specifically American horror through the lens of a Japanese developer, which I think is one of the main reasons why sending them all out to Europe didn't work very well. It lost that sort of flair. But If seems to take place in Japan, like old Japan. So I'm kind of curious how that's going to work. I think that's the one I'm most interested in right now, even more so than the Silent Hill 2 remake. So, we've already talked about the composer of Silent Hill 4, but we have not talked about one of two of its vocalists, that being Mary Elizabeth McGlynn. She was born October 16th, 1966 in Newark, New Jersey, and she works not only as a vocal performer on various games, she also works as a voice actress and an ADR director, so she directs dubs, mostly of anime stuff. She served as the director for the dubs of anime like Cowboy Bebop, which, holy hell, that's still, in my opinion, one of the best dubs of any anime that's ever been done. Digimon Tamers, Digimon Frontier, Naruto, Naruto Shippuden, Digimon Fusion, and a bunch of others. Those are just the names that stood out to me. And outside of anime, she's also been the voice director for She-Ra and the Princesses of Power, which I didn't realize started in 2018. Weird. Wow. Star Wars Resistance, Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous, and The Legend of Vox Machina. And she also does voices, like I said. Most notable that I noticed were she plays Julia in Cowboy Bebop, but she is also the English voice of Major Kusanagi in Ghost in the Shell, starting with Standalone Complex. So not in the movie, but in the anime that followed it, and then everything else that followed that. Other anime she acts in include Outlaw Star, Rurouni Kenshin, Naruto, Dot Hack Sign, Code Geass, Bleach, Naruto Shippuden, and Boruto, Naruto Next Generations. In case you forgot that Naruto is still going. Notably, she is also the voice of Nina Williams in Tekken. And she is also, fun fact that I did not know, she's married to Steve Bloom, who is another voice actor that we are familiar with.
She sure is. So Julia and Spike got together nearly 20 years later.
That is really cool and interesting, honestly. You can follow her on Twitter at Mary E. McGlynn. I could not find a lot of information on like her background or anything like that, unfortunately. She does have a website, but it is extremely bare bones. But it has more lists of the stuff she has done and worked on. So if you really want to go see an extensive list that was put together by the person themselves, you can go look into that. In terms of her discography, she is credited as a vocal performer on Silent Hill 3, 4, Origins, Homecoming, Shattered Memories, Downpour, Book of Memories, and the two Silent Hill films being Silent Hill and Revelation 3D. She is a vocalist on Ace Combat 5, The Unsung War, Shadows of the Damned, Dishonored, Kolot, The Medium, and Stray Gods most recently, where she plays Persephone. And as with the historical development research of the soundtrack itself, like I said, as with most games of the series, in fact, I believe all but one game in the entire series, maybe two. I don't know who did the music for Book of Memories, because I forget that game exists 99% of the time. Akira Yamaoka composed the whole soundtrack. We, again, talked about him in episode 38 when we covered Silent Hill 2, and the soundtrack also features vocals by McGlynn, as well as Joe Ramersa, who was our subject for episode 92 when we talked about Silent Hill 3. And a shout out to the website Silent Hill Memories, by the way, which has a breakdown of not only all the versions of the soundtrack that were ever released, but it also has a list that says where the tracks play in the game.
Oh, clutch. I love when a fan site does that. So good.
Which is how I found out that 50% of that soundtrack release doesn't.
Oh.
It's very odd. But all but one of the tracks we're going to talk about today do play in the game. So I made sure using that resource to figure it out that way. So let's jump into the 5 critical tracks for Silent Hill 4. The first being Melancholy Requiem. So according to Silent Hill Memories, this plays at the game's beginning. I don't quite know what that means. I guess maybe the opening credits or something? I'm not sure. But this song immediately stood out to me. It doesn't feel exactly like 2 and 3, but I think it feels close enough that you could point to this and go, oh yeah, Silent Hill. That's what that sounds like. That's what Silent Hill sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
And like the heavy drums, I really dig. And just in general, the whole like oppressive feeling of the song just fits really well. And you can definitely picture yourself finding out you are locked in your apartment, possibly forever, to this song, I feel like.
Also, a total sidebar. The cover art for this soundtrack is wild.
It goes hard, and I don't understand what any of it means.
It's like a weird art piece with monsters and cages and animals and a lion weirdly like almost upside down and fire, volcanoes. It's a lot. Go check it out on the video version or look it up for yourself. It is weird. I like how you have a bunch of staples here with the heavy drums, the piano, but the string here is like synthetic, or at least like it's MIDI, but then distorted and messed with enough to make you feel unsettled. Like it's not an authentic performance, but it gives you that uneasiness that Yamaoka is just so good at with the right amount of tweaks.
And that's why I love him. I love that man's work. I'm so happy he's working on the 2 remake. There are a lot of vocal songs in Silent Hill 4, which is kind of a trend that 3 started, which, looking back on it, they were in development at the same time. That makes sense. One very likely sort of influenced the other in some form. And the first one you're going to hear in the game is called Room of Angel.
Is the light? Wonder if it's weeping somewhere. Here's a lullaby to close your eyes at goodnight. It was always you that I despised. I don't feel enough for you to cry. Oh well. Here's a lullaby to close your eyes goodbye.
So like I said, this is basically the first vocal song you're going to hear in the game. It plays in the opening credits, but it also plays at Cynthia's death, which is the first death that Henry is witness to in the game. Vocals, of course, by Mary McGlynn, who does a very good job at... Something that you notice when you listen to basically all of her work in Silent Hill is that she has a really, really good sort of melancholic, grieving quality to her singing voice, or at least she can put that on very well, because that's what this feels like to me. It plays over somebody's death. Of course, grieving is a part of it. But I think that this is a really good first vocal song to bring up. It's not my favorite in the game, but considering it is essentially the first, I think it deserves to be on the Critical 5 at the very least.
Yeah, her register is perfect for the kind of vibe it's trying to give. Also, it does a really good job like mixing in layers, whether it's her on multiple tracks and all that, but it works really well. I think, yeah, if you're setting this up as like an opening theme or like an early death theme, like you're getting the mood really easily from this, and yeah, she just does a great job with this performance, and I'm looking forward to hearing more. Yeah, her work is definitely known throughout I think anime fans growing up, but I don't know how often you hear her singing performances, and it's nice to learn more about this.
And it's interesting because I had never looked into the soundtracks of the other Silent Hill games. I probably should, because they're still Yamaoka. Even if the games aren't very good, the soundtracks are still Yamaoka. Like, even in this case, I hate Silent Hill 4. The soundtrack's really good. But I was not aware that she's just a recurring vocalist from 3 onwards. I would not be surprised if they brought her back for the remake of 2. But let's listen to a song that is more in line with the kind of song you would think about if you thought about Silent Hill soundtracks. This is critical track number 3, Wounded War Song. One thing I noticed listening through this soundtrack is that it has a lot less focus on the creepy machine sounds than I mostly associate with Yamaoka's work. But it still has these creepy feeling synths that you hear. Like some of the synths you hear right at the very beginning of the clip, or at least right before it, is straight up a synth you hear in Silent Hill 2. It's the same exact MIDI instrument. And I think that this song has that sort of creeping dread feeling that Silent Hill should have. And that's why I feel like it fits very well in this Critical 5.
Yeah, I can't think of this kind of synth sound being in any other song, but that's just Yamaoka doing his magic, because it works for this kind of just detached connection, but yet some kind of continued mission push here. And yeah, it sounds unlike anything I've heard of, but that's really, really neat. I love hearing new kinds of instruments on this show, whether it's synthetically created or distorted like this is, or just any other kind of instrument.
Yeah, I've learned about more instruments on this show than I think I've ever learned about in any other way in my life.
Yeah.
So the rest of the songs we're going to talk about are vocal pieces, but I'm glad that I was at least able to include 2 Silent Hill-ish songs that weren't the vocals, but the vocal songs in this game are kind of where the soundtrack shines in a lot of ways, and that is, I think, especially true for critical track number 4, Tender Sugar.
Not again, not again, not again. This dream I can't awake. What is real? What is real? What is real? It's getting hard for me to take what I need, what I need, what I need. I need a something I rely, and the way sugar gently hides me.
In case you forgot, when Akira Yamaoka is not making creepy ambiance, he's making rock. And it's really good. And this is the best vocal song in the game. I'm going to specify in the game for reasons we'll get to later, and just fits perfectly. Apparently, according to Silent Hill Memories, it plays during a character's appearance in a past version of the apartment. And it names the character on Silent Hill Memories, but I will not, in case somebody has listened to me complain for the past half hour and decided they want to play Silent Hill 4 for whatever reason. And of course, again, vocals by Mary E. McGlynn. And this is just a whole new vibe from Room of Angel. And first of all, it's Yamaoka at his guitar best. As far as I am aware, all of the solo guitar is Yamaoka himself. He just plays his own stuff on his music.
Yeah, the solo outside the clip is really cool. Good vibe. Definitely listen to the piece as a whole.
But just in general, the chorus that plays in the clip, man, again, McGlynn kills it. She is so good at nailing the vibe that these songs are supposed to capture, in terms of Silent Hill, the least happy series of video games there's ever been. And she does a great job. I love her vocals. She's so talented.
It's giving Amy Lee Evanescence vibes, which totally fits at the time of release. But that's the kind of grungy rock that is of that era. It's really cool to listen to this and just think of the rock that was being made at that time.
Yeah, it definitely feels a lot like that. I feel like you could play this at a grunge concert and nobody would bat an eye.
100%, yeah.
And critical track number 5 is actually the credits theme of Silent Hill 4. This is Cradle of Forest.
Now, with the forest talking insects and birds, does the scent of soil and beast breathe the life into the animal you hide? It's a great illusion one never knows. When you think you're really alone, feel the eyes of someone looking on you.
Spelling intact, by the way. That is how it's spelled on the official release.
It's something Cradle.
That's not how you spell cradle, but I guess I can't question Akira Yamaoka. But like I said, this is the song that plays during the credits. And the vocals are by Joe Ramersa, who you might recognize from the credits theme of Silent Hill 3 as well, which that one was a vocal version of the Silent Hill theme, and this is more of an original song. And again, I really like Ramirez's vocals because it is such a difference between him and McGlynn, just in terms of vibes. And I don't know, something about his voice. Part of it is a little bit goofy, but I think he still kills the feeling that you're supposed to get, especially having finished a Silent Hill game.
There is a somber timbre to it, isn't there? It's really, really interesting. Yeah, the guitar instrumentation and mixing sounds about the same, but it just gives a whole different tenor to hear Ramersa's voice as opposed to McGlynn's. Wow.
So I got 2 tracks on the cutting room floor. Again, they're both vocal pieces. The first one is Your Rain.
On the sidewalk, on the city, on the streets, just no whisper. Busy people going nowhere. See me soaking the rain. Feel the passion and the matters. My resistance is waiting like a flower in the basement, waiting for a
This apparently plays during the escape endings, which are the good endings. The quote-unquote good endings. I believe the actual good ending is included in that number, but it's basically the endings that, hey, Henry got out, of the apartment. Now, whether Eileen is still alive or the apartment is normal now can change depending on what ending you got, but I believe this plays during all of those. I really, really like again, this is some grade A Yamaoka guitar. There are a lot of solos that you don't hear in the clip, obviously, because the clip is the chorus. But like one of them, shortly after the clip, actually, is an homage to the original Silent Hill theme, which is awesome. And we'll talk about homages a lot in the next track as well. But if it were up to me, I mean, it was, but you get what I mean. I would swap Your Rain and Room of Angel. But Room of Angel feels like it's more important to the game in itself. So I couldn't really justify that, but I'm glad I can at least put it here on the cutting room floor.
It's also weird then that I feel like I've heard this song before. Don't know where, don't know when, but the great chorus drop hits and it's like, oh, I'm getting weird deja vu from somewhere. This is really neat, and it feels like McGlynn just recorded an album essentially at this point.
Basically, yeah. And there's more McGlynn where that came from, because the track on the cutting room floor, the other one, is my favorite song on the soundtrack. And you might be asking them, why is it not on the Critical 5? Because this is the one that is not actually in the game, apparently. This is Waiting for You, live at Heaven's Night. Not only does the title of the song make reference to a location in Silent Hill 2, Heaven's Night is the strip club that Maria works at, there are multiple moments that seem to legitimately just be borrowing the melody from Theme of Laura. None of them are in the clip because I, again, did the chorus because I love the chorus of this song. It is also recorded to sound like it is, in fact, being played live at a venue. It was not played live anywhere. It's just smoke and mirrors. But that kind of adds to it, and I guess that makes it make more sense that it doesn't play in the game. The lyrics, if you look into them, could be seen as being sung from the perspective of Mary, James's wife. And further solidifying that possible connection, Mary E. McGlynn is actually the voice of Mary and Maria in the HD Collection's new dub of 2. And I would not be surprised if she came back for the remake. Even though I love McGlynn a lot, the original Mary voice is untouchable. Just the if you've never seen like the letter reading at the end of that game, maybe like top 5 vocal performances in any video game I've ever played, ever. It's fantastic. But it's more likely that the lyrics are actually supposed to be from the perspective of Walter Sullivan, who is the antagonist of Silent Hill 4. But I like that there are so many references to 2 in this song, both musically and in terms of lyrics and the title. And it's just really cool seeing Yamaoka do his own throwbacks to games he worked on previously. I think that's really neat.
Yeah, I mean, the theme of Laura touch outside of the clip is, those are great moments. This might be Mary Elizabeth McGlynn's best vocal performance on the soundtrack.
Oh, I agree.
And it's a shame that it's not in the game proper, but it's just raw. It sounds real, and not that any of the other ones don't, but there's just feels like there's more power and just like authenticity behind this one. It's so good, and it really resonates.
For me, in terms of her Silent Hill work, at least what I've heard, it would be between this and You're Not Here in Silent Hill 3, which I think is also a very good vocal performance. But yeah, no, this performance is so good. This song was on the Critical 5 until I learned that it does not play in the game. Which explained why I had never heard it before, I guess. But by far, favorite song on the soundtrack, just in general, in-game or not. So what will I never forget about Silent Hill 4? I think I've made that clear. I've made that pretty clear over the course of the last, 50 minutes. I don't like this game. I could not recommend this game to anybody. If you're truly curious, I can't stop you. And maybe you'll like it more than I did. There are quite a few people that really, really like Silent Hill 4. There are some people for whom it is their favorite Silent Hill game. We call those people psychopaths, but they exist. And the soundtrack is absolutely fantastic. The apartment is a cool setting. There are some really good monster designs in Silent Hill 4. I think I've said all the nice things I could say about Silent Hill 4. I didn't like it, and that's, I guess, where we're gonna leave it.
A good way to round out this episode of fourth installments in Konami franchises, these Konami 4s of Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots, and Silent Hill 4, The Room. Really tough not to make a joke about The Room and Tommy Wiseau, but we waited this long, and here it is. But wow, a good episode here as we're getting close to the end of Spooky Season 2023 on Original Soundchat. That will do it for us this week. You can find me on Twitter at PeteSpeakeasy. Joe is over at StringPixel. The video version of the show is on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel, but it's that MP3 podcast version that you want, and that's hosted by Anonymous Dinosaur at anondino.squarespace.com. That's where Joe's other podcast, Smasher Pieces, is hosted, and you can find Smasher Pieces and Original Soundchat wherever you get your podcasts on catchers all around the globe, including Spotify, where we not only have a feed of podcast episodes, but also a playlist of video game music. If we talk about a track on the show and it's on Spotify, it gets added to this big, huge playlist of video game music. Joe, what's being added this week?
Both of these soundtracks are on Spotify, so both of them.
Wow, one of the few things Konami's ever done right.
They have a good amount of stuff on there, but it's pretty much just some of the Castlevania games, and then any Metal Gear game from 4 onwards.
Weird.
The ones specifically, the ones that do not have the Metal Gear Solid theme in them. Which
is
probably the reason.
Yeah, that'll be why. That'll do it. All right, when you're done listening to those, you can find the show on social media at Soundchat OST. Give us some feedback for us. How are we doing with the episodes? What do we miss on our list? And give us some suggestions for games to cover in the future. We've gotten a few recently, and it's nice to see as we start to build out 2024. Should be good there. All right, Joe, who are we talking about next week?
I will be talking about Michelle F. April.
And I'll be talking about Teruo Taniguchi. All right, Joe, let's play us out.
So, I could have gone to get a cover of a song that's actually in the game, but it's my segment and I get to do what I want. And I found immediately a cover of Waiting for You by none other than Game Metal, whom we have used as transitions before, featuring the vocalist Lacey Johnson, who absolutely kills it. It's rad. It's a fantastic cover, and I really hope you enjoy it as much as I did. You listeners should go listen to the full song. The full Waiting for You is fantastic, whether it's this cover or the original song.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for listening this week on Original Soundchat. We'll see you next time. Take care.